Welcome to the Aro Benaiah Show, where we highlight the stories of blue collar entrepreneurs, trade people, and business leaders who have started with their hands and built something lasting. Today, I'm joined by Stewart Ervin, founder of Bracket Management and creator of Built to Run, of the 100 million system with over 25 years in finance, operation, and manufacturing leadership. Stewart has helped companies scale, breakthrough profit selling, and build business that truly runs. We'll talk about his journey from starting his first business at 16 to becoming a trusted guide for owners who want to grow without losing control. Once again, it's good to have you on the show, Stewart.
Thank you, sir.
What was it like growing up for you?
Yes, I grew up in a pretty standard household. I have two brothers. Again, very stable, standard middle class American upbringing. I guess for me, from a business standpoint, I knew at a super early age I wanted to go into business. I didn't necessarily know what. Did I want to go into self-employment, entrepreneurship, small business, corporate America, so on and so forth. So I really set out to try to figure that out. I was blessed that my dad started his first company when I was roughly 13 or 14.
Oh,
And so I was able to start working in the family business at a super early age, which gave me the foundation that I needed to do what I do today. At the time, super impatient and thinking I deserved everything, so on and so forth. But hindsight now, I realize that it was the training grounds that really set me up for success today.
wow, that was really, really amazing. So, growing up, what experience shaped your mindset towards work and entrepreneurship?
Well, the reality is I kind of fell into it, honestly. So I was working for my dad, and so the company he had started was a vinyl fencing manufacturer, fabricator. So he would make the fencing designs and sell to the particular fence companies in the area, and they would serve the end use customer, the homeowner, and do the install, so on and so forth. And so when I was 16 years old, my dad came to me and said, "Hey, our clients are really struggling to find labor. They're having a hard time keeping up with the demand. Do you think you and your brother want to start learning how to put up fence? You build it, so you understand the scope and dynamic of what that looks like structurally, but will you have any interest in putting up fence?" And so I was like, "Yeah, why not?" And so me and my brother basically started a company at 16 years old as a subcontractor to fence companies. And at that time, if you're familiar with doing fence installation, you have post hole diggers, right? The classic stab it in the ground, pull the dirt out, so on and so forth. And so for many, many months, it was just me and him, and we would trade off and digging holes by hand because we didn't have anything. And there was one particular job was a little patio, and so a very small fence. And the fence company that we were subbing for said, "Hey, you guys are young. I have this auger over here that we never use. It's a two-man auger. We really only need a one-man because we put up chain link. So I think versus getting paid, you should take this two-man auger as payment." But automatically, I was thinking, well, boom, that's huge, right? That's an efficiency pickup. I don't have to dig with hole diggers anymore. We took the auger for payment, and that auger made us so much money over a 10 and 12 year time frame. It was unreal. And so I got the first taste of entrepreneurship at a very early age. Now, luckily, I ran that fence company on the side for 16 years, give or take. The fence company is what funded my master's degree. The fence company is what I always leaned on when I was jumping out and trying to start in real estate investing, so on and so forth. And so that two-man auger that I took for basically for labor for free made so much money, but it opened up so many doors of opportunity to allow me to really jump out and try things. So it basically was that financial backing I needed to kind of originally what in time will allow me to step out and do my own thing.
Wow, that was really pretty amazing, especially for that particular young age. How was the experience for you? Because being that particular young age, sometimes it's just snow diving, doing other different kind of things. But the rate of responsibility you actually take up in managing the business, running it, and your dedication to it's really, really very profound. How was the experience for you?
How was my experience for what now?
More like running the business at that particular
Running the
young
business.
age.
Gotcha. So at that point in time, you spend all your time working in the business, right? Because I was
Yeah.
young. I was 16 years old. It wasn't until later, And I mean, like 10 or 15 years later that I realized what I had learned, right? So you're so busy, and I see so many entrepreneurs in the world today, they spend all their time working in the business versus on the business. And so um, in reality, in the early years, that's all it was: grinding, trying to figure out how to make it work. How do you scale the business? That was also back in 98, 99, right? So it was no modern day social media, none of that stuff. So it was just word of mouth, knocking on doors. What kind of signs can you put up? It was just a fight. At that point, I was such a young kid and so immature in overall business knowledge. It was just a grind every day.
Wow. Amazing, amazing. So, what was the hardest transition you have to face in your career, and how did you actually overcome it?
Yeah, so the hardest transition I had to face was back in 2006, 2005, 2006. I started flipping houses on the side, right? So invested in real estate, started getting some rental property here and there. By this point, I continued to put up fence on the side, but I had left the family business and I was in a corporate my first corporate career, right? And so I had obtained my master's degree at that point and was working, and I had enough income on the side from the fence company and from investing in real estate that I stepped out of the corporate world and started investing in real estate full time, which basically we were flipping houses. So I was flipping houses and putting up fence. So that was really good through 2007, 8, but in 2009, obviously, at that point, the market had completely shifted due to the global crisis, and they had put a moratorium on foreclosures, and they had basically stopped foreclosing on houses. Well, that meant my inventory dried up. I had no ability to buy homes to flip. And so therefore I started buying homes out of estates, and it just basically my income dried up. And so again, I had the fence company, but majority of my income came from real estate investing. So what happened, basically I ran out of cash, and I had to make a decision when I was going to double down on fencing, or how was I going to make this work. Um, but I had to humble myself and go back working for corporate America again. Um, and so that's what I did. But that transition was very difficult because we had so much success early on in that business for it to basically kind of overnight all go away. And so I had to shut that down and go back to work for corporate America. Hindsight, it was the best move I ever made, but in that moment, it was extremely difficult.
Wow, that was pretty touching. And can you actually share the failure that actually turned you that turns into a turning point for for your success?
The turning point for my success. So that job that I took when I went back in 2010 back into the corporate
The corporate,
setting.
yeah.
Yeah, basically my job was to go into companies that were, so I was working in aerospace for a particular program, and I was in the supply chain department. And what would happen is if a supplier was unable to support the program from a delivery or a quality standpoint, I was the guy that they would send in to help turn the company around. And so I'd have to go into this facility and not know anything, or not know anyone, and try to understand what's going on in the business to help get back on track. So I did that for 4 years. In 2015, one of the suppliers that I helped turn around approached me and said, "Hey, I want to sell my company. And you've been on site with me for 6 months now. I really like the way you how you run your business, how you do your stuff, right? You're fair, but you make it happen, and you're respectful of people, but you get things done. And I would love to hire you to come run my business for me, so I can go sell and position myself to be able to actually sell my company." So that was a major turning point because that was the first opportunity that I got to step out and go assist a business owner in taking their company from point A to point B. And so that turning point one was pretty big. Then it happened again. Then it happened again. And I went
Wow.
into one of the largest turnarounds that I'd ever done, which was about a $20 million turnaround. And the guy asked me, he said, "We have fought some of these issues for 7, 8, 9 years, and you've come in and within 90 days, you have turned this company around. I don't understand how you got it done so fast." And then I said, "Well, I've got a playbook. I've done this enough now. I've got a playbook. I've got a
Hmm.
series of things that I do when I walk into a company." And then I realized, oh crap, I've got a playbook. And so now it's time to box this up and really start offering this out to something more than just what I'm doing today. And so that's where the built to run system started.
Wow, that was pretty amazing. Is the fact that over time, owing to the corporate job we're into, you were actually able to kind of develop some unique set of skill owing to your consistency in doing those things, flipping business from one particular end to the other. And that was really, really amazing. So after your years in leadership, what made you return fully into entrepreneurship with bracket management?
Yeah. I really just recognized that I had something that a lot of small businesses needed, right? And so that big turnaround that I did was kind of the cherry on top. It was a one division in a $7.2 billion a year company. And in that, I was able to sit for roughly 4 years as a senior executive in that company to really understand strategy. So I had learned a ton about operations and finance, but what I really was missing was that final piece of strategy. And the whole time I was at that company, all I could think about was if I could take this into the small business arena, we could really, really impact a ton of small businesses. Because again, going back to what I said earlier when I ran the fence company, I recognize that most companies work in their business and not on the business. Most entrepreneurs, they start their company because they're experts in the service that they provide, be it they're expert painters, they're experts in whatever. They're not necessarily experts in business side of things. And so this built to run system is the business operating system that entrepreneurs can go with. And I feel like I was called to just help as many small businesses as I possibly could. And that's why I made the decision to take that step out. Because again, I wanted to help many companies, not just one at a time.
Wow, this is really, really amazing. So from what you have seen over time, what is the most common struggle you see that's holding back small business and small size business? What do you think is holding them back?
Yeah, in every case, the thing that's holding the business back is the business owner or business leader, right? So, again, I go back to what I said earlier.
Yeah.
The business founder or leader typically is an expert in the field that they are operating in, right? So they're expert painters, they're expert plumbers, so on and so forth. They're not expert business people.
Yeah.
And so what you'll find is most companies will scale to a point, and that point may vary based off of whoever you are as a person. I've seen people cap out of $1 million. I've seen people cap out at 30 million, some at 80 million. So it really varies by company, but at the end of the day, the business is only as good as the leader, right? And so the leader has to recognize if I've capped out, only person to blame is me, right? And so there's John Maxwell in his book 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership references law of the lid, right? And so law of the lid suggests that the leader, if he's a leader of 5 out of 10, the organization is only going to be a 5. And if you've got people who are operating at 9 and 10, they're going to get frustrated and leave.
Yeah.
And you're only going to be able to keep people who are at a level 5 from a performance standpoint. And so it's critically important as a business leader to, again, if you've hit a ceiling, to look at yourself, and then you need to surround yourself with a better team.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much for this. I think this is really, really profound because a lot of small business that started as them being their self-employees, them be the only one running the business. And with them, they have team. And even if they have team, most of them, they don't understand business from the business perspective, but just from solopreneur and having one or two employees, still they don't know how to run business very
100%.
well. And the fact that you actually make reference of it just speak volume to beyond the technical aspect of doing business, the business owner must understand that running business is even beyond the technical aspect of it. There are some
That's
strategies
right.
that need to be kind of employed in running business or in the right way, in a way that's at the end of the day, you can actually hire a whole lot of persons who can actually change things around, being that you as a leader, you are growing, not just more like hindering their growth owing to the fact that you are not seeing the big picture of what the company could become.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Um, when a business is making money but running in chaos, where should the owner begin fixing things?
Hmm. So typically, if it's making money but it's operating in chaos, that would tend to lead to believe that the processes are broken within the business. Um, a lot of times, those processes center around the handoff from sales to operations, right? So either your sales team tends to either be selling more than the operations team can output, or they're not selling enough. And so a lot of times you're seeing a gas break situation. Really, that's just a symptom of a broken process, right? So you got to really look at business as a chain. Business, you have the demand side that goes into the supply side, that goes into the execution of operations, then into the back office. They're all interlinked. And so if it's chaotic, that means something within that chain is broken. So if you look at it from a standpoint of the demand side, there's a series of inputs and outputs. Do you understand the customer need? Do you understand the customer need? Right. So what's going on in the marketplace? Are you managing your customer expectations to really understand how much they need, when they need it, and are you working alongside of your operations team to make sure they're properly geared to execute? So traditionally, where I see the first chain that's being broken is between sales and operations.
Yeah.
But the reality is, you got to look at your entire value stream because it's all interlinked. You can't just cherry pick one thing or the other. The business as a whole is linked as a chain.
While looking at it as a chain and trying to troubleshoot where the problem is. I think this really spoke William because despite if he's making profits and he's staying chaos, it's owing to the process, and that's what you just analyze, which really speak volumes. So we're actually looking at it deeply to actually know where the issue is coming from and getting to fix it. So what does it mean when you say company should be built to run?
What does that mean when companies do what now?
Built to run.
Oh, built to run. What is the built to run system? Yeah, so the built to run system really is three phases, right? So the goal is to be strategy driven. So we'll start at the very beginning. Phase one really centers around getting a true baseline of where you're at. Phase one is focused on, we go in and we try to understand, one, are your financials clean? You got to know your numbers. You've got to know your numbers. So we really don't move forward until we understand where you're at financially. Phase two, do you really understand what you should be doing in regards to who you are? Do you know what your niche is? Do you know what's your mission, vision, and values? How well do you communicate to your internal and external customers? What does that look like? Also, from that standpoint, we want to know the dynamics of the people. So when it comes to personality assessments, right? What's your team makeup? Or do you have a team full of people that's just like you? Do you have a good understanding of what all that looks like? So everything is focused on really building a baseline to understand where you're at, where you're headed, so on and so forth. We work on developing a 1, 3, 5 year stretch goal, and what does that look like? And that really is what's focused on phase one. We normally do not move out of phase one until we've got a very clear path of, we understand where your financials are and that the reporting going forward is clean. You go into phase two. Phase two is where you start building that foundation up a little bit, and we start really working on your strategy, right? What's your market dominating position? We focus heavily on your SWOT analysis. What's the opportunities and threats that are in the marketplace that we need to be aware of? We work on people plans, right? We make sure that everyone understands that they're in their right seat, how they're going to be graded, what's their roles and responsibilities, what's their compensation plan. And sometimes we'd start putting together some type of a performance pay in that. But again, the whole goal is to really make sure that people understand why they work for the business, what's expected of them, and how they'll be graded. Then we put together a monthly business review. So this goes back to what we spoke about earlier of having a tight sales and operations connection. We start forecasting where we really try to nail down what the next 30 to 45 days look like. We have, again, in that same business review, we say what happened in the last 30 days, what do we need to do different going forward, and we really are trying to link that sales and operations team together. At the end of phase two, we start putting together annual plans and budgets to really start now driving the discipline and intention and everything that the company does. But once you get all those plays in place, we move into phase three, which is straight focus on strategy. And strategy really at this point is broken down into focus into three different areas. What are your pricing strategies? How well are you managing and reducing your cost? And how well are you growing your business with new business opportunities, be it new products or new markets, new customers, so on and so forth. If you can really focus all your strategy efforts in those three areas, and you have a healthy foundation that was developed in phase two, at this point, you really have a very good business and you should be able to scale it, from a year-over-year perspective.
Wow, this is pretty very amazing. I think the way you just define it into phase one, phase two, and phase three, it just speak volume to business is beyond just the technical aspect of it. And the fact that you make reference about the first phase, which is going to be your financials, getting everything right. In that particular one where you get to review a whole lot of things in terms of your personality, why you do what you do, who you are and everything, and strategies to which actually boil down to how do you get the job done, who are those you actually needed to get the job done. It's more like you defining the purpose of what the business intent is, so that at the end of the day, the employees note the in and outs of what the business entails, and the monthly review to we speak volume to looking back, what can we do differently, what mistakes do we actually encounter, and what can we do better. This is really, really
That's right.
profound. Thank you very much, Stewart.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. So what inspired you to create the 1 million $100 $100 million system, and what problem does it solve?
Yeah. So that's the playbook, right? So I go back to you asked earlier what was a turning point. So I realized that as I would go into these companies, I would do the same exact thing time after time after time again. I learned it. I said, okay, you got to do A, then B, then C, then D. And so that's when that guy asked me, he said, how did you do it? And I said, oh, I just got a playbook. So I sat down one day and I took a piece of paper out and said, what's the playbook? What have you done time and time and time and time again? And that's what you see in front. That's what I referenced earlier, the three phases. And the reason why I reference it as $100 million system is because we've been able to do that and have companies operate at $100 million successfully. And so these are companies that once operating at 60 million and now it's at 100 million. And so we've seen this thing work time and time again. So that's really where it stems from.
Wow, amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for that. So, what is one practical step from your system that is small trade persons can actually apply today?
Yeah. So the mission, vision, and values is easy. A lot of times you'll find that people they'll do a mission, vision, values to check a box. But the one thing that I have learned time and time again is those individuals who have a why, who really understand why they're in business, and they really put that in the forefront of what they do. Those are the ones who can withstand things when times get tough. They recognize there's a purpose beyond their four walls and they have a bigger why. And so that's the one practical step. Really sit down and understand why you're in business. If you can't really nail that down, when times get tough, you're going to want to fold up and call it a day. And that's really not good. Right. So with how things are today, really sit down and spend some time to really do an inward check, do a check with your team to rather understand, what is the makeup of your company? Do you all share the same values? Because that could be a part of why you may be having
Yeah.
struggles on and issues because there's a misalignment in values. So that's one very easy practical step you can do on your own without having to hire anyone because most of it's a gut check and a heart check internally.
Wow, check, heart check, mission, vision, and value. Yeah, thank you so much. I think this really speaks volumes to beyond running a business. If the why is not understand, at the end of the day, business is demanding on its own, and it can lead to burnouts if you don't know what you are in for, and you can actually properly define it to your employees. At the end of the day, definitely there's going to be misalignments along the chain of command here and there. Yeah. So, what advice will you give someone building their first small team of employees?
What advantage do I give over companies with a small team of employees? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Um, so I think for me, the advantage that we have with Bracket is we've worked with companies that were as small as 5 people all the way up to 205, right? The, at the end of the day, what we bring is clarity. We bring clarity in everything that the company does. We bring clarity in regards to what's going on in the marketplace, what's going on inside of your business. And so it doesn't matter if you have one employees all the way up to 100 and whatever employees, bringing that clarity to the business, bringing direction, focus, structure to and processes is where it really helps companies.
Wow, amazing. So how can a business owner avoid underpricing themselves just to win a job?
Ask that one more time. I'm making my
Okay, how
headphone
can
change.
business owner avoid underpricing themselves just to win a job?
Got you. Yeah. So that goes back into value-based pricing,
Yeah.
right? In order to do value-based pricing, you need to really understand your costing. That's at the end of the day. So that's where it starts. And a lot of small businesses have a hard time understanding their pricing and their costing. And so if you do value-based pricing, what you're basically doing is you're setting yourself up as an expert or the top in your field. And that's where we get into that market dominating position. What sets you apart? Pricing, again, low pricing, high volume could be the play. But at the end of the day, you really need to understand your cost so you can therefore strategically set your pricing. Um, I tell people a lot of times, if you understand your cost and really understand your numbers and you're operating like at a 35% margin business, you can start looking at your opportunities for quotes and bids and make a decision in regards to, do I need to go after this work because I'm only going to win it at 25% margin? The worst thing you can do is continue to grow your business and reduce your margins. You can have a $100 million year business at 2% margin, and that's just not worth it, right? You're much better off to be at 50 million with 30% margin, because at the end of the day, the revenue is for vanity, profits for sanity, right? So the more profits you can make, the better off you're going to be and better off you're going to feel. And so again, you set your pricing strategies with a baseline of understanding your cost first.
Wow. Setting your price and understanding your cost first. I think that really speaks volumes. So that at the end of the day, once you know why you're into the business, you know what's the value you're bringing into being, and you know the bottom line cost of what it entails to execute that particular job. That make it heady to actually more like give a value based pricing from that particular standpoint. So how can when it comes to you running your various starting from 16 and the various company you've actually get to work with over time, who were the key mentors in your life and how were you able to navigate the various because it's really amazing that you're able to do this whole lot. And I was wondering how did actually mentors come into being or what actually inspired you while going on?
Yeah, so I've had a variety of key mentors. Obviously, I read. You can see behind me here. I read a ton, right? And
Yeah, I
I,
can see it.
I, I read a ton, and obviously a ton of podcasts, right? In that, but the reality is, there's been key figures along the way that at the time may have not seemed like a mentor, but the reality is they made an impact to some way, right? And it goes back to working with my dad's company. They brought in a partner who I thought, my gosh, why did you bring this guy on board? I didn't like the guy at the time, because I didn't understand what he was doing. But I look back and go, gosh, had it not been for Rod, man, I wouldn't know some of the things I know today. And then my first business partner in that real estate, I was a young kid, right? I was 25 years old and I was doing multi-million dollars worth of business a year. I couldn't have done it without him, right? Because he's my financial backer. And I can remember one time I had run out of money, and I called him and I said, "Look, I've run out of money. I've got to make payroll. I need $1,500." This guy's a multimillionaire, right? I said, "I need $1,500 to make payroll over the next 2 weeks," and he looked at me and said, "No, you got to figure it out. You got to figure out how to make it happen, because this ain't gonna be this ain't gonna be the last time it's gonna happen to you." And he didn't give me the money, so I had to figure out how to make it work. At the time, I thought, "God, this sucks," but the reality is, he taught me something, right? And so all along the way, I've had people who have made an impact. At this stage in the game, I have coaches that help in certain areas, right? I've got experts in sales and marketing. I've got experts that help me do certain things in regards to making my business as a whole operate better. Um, but all along the way, you have to really look and see who's feeding into you again, and just kind of be aware, because in the moment it may not seem like they're helping and mentoring you, but hindsight, you'll look back and recognize that they do.
Wow, amazing, amazing. I think the fact that you just make an example of reaching out to that you actually lend you 150 million, 100 million to actually more like for the bailout, the fact that they actually just make reference to you figuring it out, speak volume to it, put you in a tough corner. But at the end of the day, you're able to kind of figure it out, and that actually
Hmm.
boosts your confidence on what you could do different when such kind of matters arise again. So on the flip
Absolutely.
side, what role should established business owner play in creating opportunity for the younger generation?
Yeah. So again, it goes back to your why, right? It goes back to your why. How do you see your employees? How do you see where your businesses exists for, right? So I've got a variety of clients, and it's unique in regards to how each one of them look at their employees. One of my clients literally exists to give people second chances, right? People who have had a checkered past, who've had issues that they probably couldn't get a job somewhere else, he gives them an opportunity, right, to make
Wow.
something of themselves. I've got another client who they focus so heavily on the family culture of their business that they pour a lot of effort into making their employees, whole. I've got some that they just recognize that the more their businesses grow, the more they can better pour into their employees, right? And so I think most business owners who understand something why bigger than why they exist, they put their employees on a pedestal, right? And they're offering opportunities for their employees that most other companies wouldn't offer. But if you exist just for profits, more than likely you're not going to put your people on a pedestal. And that's where you need to go back into that heart check and really understand why are you in business and what's your goals.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stewart. So, if you were speaking to a trade person running a small or 2 dollars or a year business who actually want to scale, what would you tell the person first?
Yeah, so we go back to first, do you know your numbers, right? To scale without really understanding where you're at in your business is a problem. And so these three phases that we have in bracket, it applies to $1 million a year all the way up to 100 million and beyond. Um, and so the first thing is really make sure you understand your numbers. Start with that first. And so many times you'll see that people really just kind of keep a watch on their checking account and they just look and see where they're at. They're always kind of looking backwards and just kind of looking at their results. Know your numbers first, get that tight, understand your why. So when you start to try to grow and scale your business, you're really focused in and adding true value and effort because you really know where you're going versus just trying stuff. Because there's nothing worse than just trying things and it's not working and then you become depressed and say, it's not worth it and your business just doesn't grow. Know your numbers, know why you exist, know what sets you apart, and then you can really be very strategic and focused in on growth.
Well, know your numbers, the strategy to, and knowing how to actually more like improve on the numbers. I think this really speaks volume because beyond just the scaling, you should be more like aware in terms of what is actually working and also so that after scaling to the business wouldn't get lost owing to there was no why behind the business. And
That's
this
right.
really speaks volume. So finally, I'll start with what legacy do you hope your work with bracket management will leave for entrepreneurs and trade people?
Yeah, so my why is I want to help as many small businesses as I can reach the potential that the business owner has a desire to do. So the legacy I hope to lead is that I have impacted as many small businesses as humanly possible, that they have hit a crossroads or a crisis and said, hey, I'm willing to throw in the towel. I don't know what else to do. Then we can step in and help them reach the full potential and just make as a big of impact as we can in the small business arena.
Wow, this is really amazing and inspiring. I will say, yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Stars. So,
Mhm.
how can my audience get to learn more about you? How can they connect with you? And how can they actually more like reach out for help and for business?
Yeah, so I'm most active on LinkedIn if you want to kind of get an insight into me as a person. So you can just check me out on LinkedIn or you can check out the website at bracketmgmt.com.
All right. Thank you, Stewart. So, Stewart, thank you. Okay. I think before I end this particular show, I'll ask you if you were to leave more like an advice for a younger version of you, what would the advice be?
Hmm. The younger version of me, one, be more patient, which is against my DNA as a person. Be more patient and learn to enjoy where you're at in life more versus always wanting to be further down the road than reality, right? So enjoy the moment, probably is what I would say. Be more patient and enjoy the moment.
Wow, this really speaks volume. I think over the course of I think up to like 4 or 5 years now, I'll ask the same question. They end up saying being patient, being patient.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Eh, and it just dawned on me that it seems looking at this from the inside, being that you have gone through every of the particular stages and now looking back, it just dawned on you that almost everything that I actually wish for, I've gotten there. I wish I actually enjoyed this moment before now and being patient. And this
Yeah,
really speaks volume to every entrepreneur that there's a whole lot of possibility at the end of the day, but they should not actually more like lose themselves while actually more like looking forward to getting more at this particular stage. They should be patient and
that's
keep
right.
working at it. Yeah, thank you so much, Stewart. Yeah, Stewart,
Hmm.
thank you for sharing your journey and insights with us today. Your story from starting young in business to building system that help others succeed is a real inspiration to entrepreneur everywhere. For listener who want to dive deeper, you can check out Stewart's free business assessment at mgmt.com/access. And to everyone tuning in, remember that the path of tradespersons to business leader isn't just about doing it all alone. It's about building a system that runs so you can focus on growth and impact. Until next time, keep building, keep learning, and keep believing in the value of your hands and your vision.